This episode of the E-commerce Playbook podcast is brought to you by Segmetrics. Get clarity on what channels are driving the most revenue for your brand beyond the first purchase and send data directly to Facebook so they can find more of the right customer. Start your free trial at segmetrics.io. That's segmetrics.io, or check the link in the show notes.
All right, we are back with another episode of the E-commerce Playbook podcast. I am grabbing the host seat once again to interview a very, very special guest who shares my namesake and has also shared many intimate moments with me over the course of the last 5-6 years. And I'm excited to share a little bit about that story. We're going to rap about cost caps. We're going to rap about influencer content. We're going to get deep and tactical and wide and philosophical all at the same time. I'm excited to welcome today Taylor Lagace from Kynship. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Man, come on. CTC ever goes down and burns, you got a place here at Kynship to just announce me on calls.
Just like, what is your stupid Otter AI thing that always shows up to your meetings ahead of you?
I don't even put it in there anymore, but yeah, exactly right.
So TL, welcome, man. It's good to have you on the pod. I can't believe it's been this long since you have since you haven't been here. I didn't realize that we hadn't done this yet. So
It's just taken about 4 years of trust up to be able to let me have me on the pod.
That's right. That's the roadmap. So for all of you people emailing me asking if your CEO can be on the pod, 4 years. That's all it takes. Put in the work.
4 years of trust built after I worked for the man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows how much trust he had in me while I worked for the man.
So first, tell everybody who you are. I know you've got a big Twitter following, but let's assume they don't know. So let's tell them, who are you and what do you do? And then we'll give a little context to our shared story first.
That was Taylor's way to ask if I would promote this after the fact. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm Taylor Lagace, co-CEO alongside my partner Cody Woodick at Kynship. We're an influencer marketing agency as well as paid social agency. Prior to launching Kynship, and that's what we're going to jump into, we were actually seed funded by Common Thread Collective and Taylor Holiday here, and I was working under him as his entrepreneurial apprentice, quote unquote, which is just a glorified way of saying I was his assistant, but with some extra perks, and you got to get in some nice rooms where I got to learn a lot for sure.
Yeah, so TL and I go back a long time, six or so years probably now, right? So Jordan Palmer, my co-founder, and TL knew each other through the sports agency you worked at, right? Is that how we initially got in contact?
So Jordan Palmer was how do I say this without like low key roasting him? He was a client at our. I worked at an NFL marketing agency, Athletes First. Carson Palmer was a client. Jordan Palmer was a client, sourcing deals like think Aaron Rodgers times State Farm. So Jordan Palmer, that's how I got to get to know him. And then he obviously worked at Common Thread Collective, which led to the transition.
So TL finishes up his collegiate career as a football player, is looking to make his way into the professional world. He's working at a marketing agency. That Go Bruins. And somehow gets in touch with Jordan, and we convince him to come over because at the time, CTC was thinking about launching influencer marketing. And we had always done some form of influencer marketing at CTC just because mainly Jordan's connections into that world and a lot of the work that we did at Kalo spilled it over into it. But TL was going to come and help build our influencer department. And then at the same time, as we were doing that, it was sort of like fledgling, kind of working, kind of not. I don't know how you would describe it, TL, but I forget exactly. How did we make the transition to decide to do the entrepreneurial apprentice thing? Do you even remember? I'm trying to think about how we made that sort of transition.
To be honest, Peter was transitioning out, and I reached out to you. Right. I shot you a text. I said, ooh, if there's any position that I would want to be able to step into, it'd be that. Just the access that I would have, the learning opportunity, all of the above.
So it's probably worth reflecting on. So about early on, I created this role. I would get a lot of feedback from my partners that I needed an assistant, and I
worst assistant probably of all time. We're just going to preface that, and I want to say that.
Well, this is the funny part, right? So I hated the idea of an assistant. I didn't feel like I needed somebody to manage my emails or calendars, but I did feel like, okay, maybe there could be this mutual exchange where I would take somebody who has entrepreneurial ambition, bring them into my sphere, and then allow them to sort of be in every space that I'm in, and in exchange for helping me manage my schedule. Now, the tension with this is that the people that generally over-index on administrative skill tend to not be the most entrepreneurial sometimes. These are generalizations. There's obviously exceptions. And then vice versa. The people who are highly entrepreneurial don't always have the best administrative skills. So I had a series of entrepreneurial apprentices. So Peter Hassan, who's now one of the executive business development leaders at CTC and our board member, TL, and then a woman by the name of Prachi Modi. And all of them are these amazing humans, but that were none of them were good assistants at all, including TL might have been the worst.
I would probably say I was for sure the worst. And for all those who would ever contact Kynship, don't worry, administrative tasks are all delegated.
But the point was that TL got to be in every room that I was in, every meeting that I was in, from partner offsites to executive meetings to sales calls, whatever, and just soak up and interact together. So what was obvious about TL from the beginning was, though, that he was an idea guy. Like, so one of the things he did do really well as an entrepreneurial apprentice is he was always sort of processing the information and coming up with new things that we could try. Now, in that role, that wasn't exactly necessarily what I needed at that moment. I needed more to like handle the things we were doing. But this dude would write and write notebooks, ideas, all sorts of things. And it was clear that like vision, direction, ideation, he had a thought about where he wanted to go. And so being able to spend time together and cultivate that was where at the end of this, so the idea of the entrepreneurial apprentice thing was that it was a 1-year termed role. It would end and you had to go out. You were getting pushed out of the nest, either into a role at CTC or beyond.
And yeah, that was it. And I was in that role for 4 months and they couldn't get rid
Yeah,
of me
and
quicker.
yours got cut a little shorter.
They couldn't get rid of me
Yours got cut a
quicker.
little
I'm just
shorter.
going to say that it's because you wanted to send me off.
Exactly.
But it was probably
But-
because
but-
I was just doing a really bad job.
But at the time, like there's 3 guys that I had spent a lot of time with over the course of early career. So one of them was your partner now, Cody Whittick, whose brother Travis and I went to high school together, and Cody worked at Kalo running all of the influencer marketing. And so I knew him, was close with him, had a similar sense of ambition and potential as you. And then Reed Nalaboff, who now works at Solo Stove, was your other initial partner, somebody that I had hired at Kalo, was one of our first marketing employees. And you were all 3 guys that reminded me of me at that same position, which is that someone gave me, Josh, namely, in the Power Balance crew, gave me an opportunity with no resume, specifically no experience, to come in and be involved very intimately in a setting that gave me a huge platform to build my career. And so for me, it made total sense that the 3 of you should and could put your sort of powers together to launch something. And so I remember we all sort of I sat down with each of you individually and was like, hey, because you guys didn't really know each other that well at the time, right? Like, how well did you know Cody at the time?
I played ball with Reed and RIP, those Monday night basketball games at
man.
CTC's basketball gym. Those were the best. So I knew Reed from that. And you get to know someone pretty well when playing basketball with them over the course of time. And I met with Cody once or twice for lunch. But yeah, hardly at all. You were definitely the common thread.
Yeah. So I remember sitting with each of you and being like, okay, I think the 3 of you should do something. I think you should launch it. And here's what I'm willing to do is like, we'll sort of fund your guys' first few months of salary and everything for a partnership in what you want to do. And I'm just going to give you a blank slate. We'll give you an office, we'll give you space, and I'll give you runway to go solve the problem. And the 3 of you put your heads together and came up with what is now Kynship. There's a lot of sort of machinations of it along the way. But at the end of the day, I was really just betting that the 3 of you putting your heads together, and then eventually just you and Cody as Reed moved on, we're going to solve the problem, because that's what I watched you exhibit. It wasn't that you had this specific vision for some business plan. It was that like, I believe that if I put you 2 together, gave you opportunity and space, you would take it, run with it. And that's what you've done with Kynship in a really cool way.
Yeah, come on. And I appreciate the opportunity. I'll always be grateful. I hope
And
I'm always
so-
able to show that.
Yeah, the reason I start with this story is because recently, and one of the promptings for this is that Kynship actually bought CTC back out of their equity position, which I think is a really cool sort of testament to the story, which is, one, it's a great return on our investment that we made in them. They sort of honored the investment that we made early on in betting on them. And now they get to take it and make it their own as we sort of support them and hear from the sidelines. But I'm curious, TL, as you reflect on this journey, what do you think you've learned the most in your first 3 years as starting an agency, building a business, about sort of what it takes to succeed? If you were speaking to early stage agency folks out there, what do you think you learned the most over your first 2 years of getting to this point now where you're sort of independent, off and running?
Failure, biggest
Mhm.
thing, for sure. You think about, like, we had 3 months of runway, right? After that 3 months of runway, unless you were like this pipeline for us, which you guys did provide some clients in the beginning, right? But after that, you're on your own. I'm not going to say you guys didn't provide us any clients. I'm not going to say that. But we were very much so on our own after that in order to make it happen. And with that comes sales. And with that comes often putting together different package offerings. There was a lot of misses, a lot of no's, a lot of fails in that first year, without a doubt. Because like TH was saying, there there wasn't a specific business plan. Hey, this is the strategy. Like we had strategies, right? That we're going after things that we believed in, and principles and values and whatnot, we think could be effective. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of failure, a lot of rejection, a lot of no's, figuring it out. And I would say getting comfortable with that and continue to go and press forward is definitely a huge one. I'm curious to hear your experience with that too. What was
Well,
that
I
first?
think there's something really interesting that I learned. So we did this model with a few different companies in my time throughout. We did this initially with Left Brain Logistics at Kalo, where we sort of partnered to create our own 3PL and sort of vertically integrate with a separate business that we launched out of being our supplier. So we did that with Left Brain Logistics. We did this with you all at Kynship. We did this with TMYD, a service that we created at CTC. And when I reflect back on the main differences of why I think you guys have created, let's just call it escape velocity, where you're succeeding beyond the sphere of us as a customer, is that we weren't a customer. Is that
Yeah,
both LBL and TMYD, the problem was is that there was so much connection to CTC or Kalo as the primary source of the revenue that it almost prohibits you from doing exactly what you described, which is
right.
forcing you to go solve and sell and get something else. And it's almost like we're too important early on as too much of your revenue. And that's really actually prohibitive to that evolutionary thing that you described, which is you got to go survive and you got to go sell.
For sure. And oh, I was bitter, I would say at certain
Yeah.
not really not
No,
not
totally.
really, but I was bitter at certain points because I remember we would have conversations that first year. I'd be like, "TH, what the heck, man? Like, why aren't you throw some clients here?" And you would say, it's not to your benefit for me just to go
Right.
force our teams and our internal employees to work with your company. If you want to work with them, get on a call, sell them. And don't even
Yep.
use the excuse that BTC is an equity holder in our company and we're a partner of your business. So anytime an influencer comes
Yep.
up, you need to send them our way, this and that. No, go
Yep.
survive, go sell, go make it happen. So that for sure. I would say another thing is for sure finances, understanding the unit economics of your service offerings, understand profit margin and how well you're able to do that at scale. That's something you definitely ingrained. Understand your calendar. I always loved that. That's the first thing you wrote on the whiteboard, right? What was it one more time? Where you find inner
Ma-
peace when it aligns with
Inner
your
peace.
values?
Yeah. Inner peace is when your calendar aligns to your values.
I would say that's still like, I mean, you think about someone that's not good at administrative tasks, your calendar is such a,
Right.
like it, every season it changes too, but getting efficient with your time to be able to put your head on the pillow at night saying, yeah, I did everything that what I was supposed to do and we're going to maximize the value of that time. Because I don't have a boss. I don't have TH saying, hey,
Yeah.
entrepreneur apprentice, go do this today and complete these tasks. You got to allocate your resources and time accordingly. And then just culture, company culture at Common Thread was I didn't think it existed before going into it. Came from a world, I worked at Athletes First with Jordan Palmer, right? Prior to Common Thread Collective. That's like NFL marketing agency world. Bunch of guys honestly playing in the mud out for themselves, very individualistic, just not a thriving company culture. TH said something pretty profound to me at one point that has definitely stuck with me at this time. But the more that he from an objective standpoint, doesn't really make sense and it seems countercultural, I would say. But the more he invested resources, time, money, all of the above into the employees, just time and time again, even though more cash was going out, the business would grow and the culture would thrive. And it was just pretty cool to be a part of that. And I've definitely taken that as a massive takeaway in what I tried to create at Kynship too.
Yeah, you guys have done a great job. I see all the same early stage energy that I remember back in those days at CDC inside of what you guys are doing now. So it's cool to watch, and those evolutionary skills of selling are so critical to survival. It forces you to deal with the cold reality of the market, right? Like that somebody has to take their money out of their pocket and give it to you and be satisfied with it, and that's a high bar. And so I think as much as you can face that, refine the product, face it, refine the product, face it, refine the product, the better you get. And so that's the next thing I want to ask then. So, what has been the evolution of the product in terms of influencer marketing is a really broad term, right? You guys entered this with some, I would say, values oriented ideas about what you wanted to be in the marketplace, right? And I think that that's really important. It matters. It can help to sort of differentiate and assign purpose to your work. But how has what you guys actually do evolved? And what is the product that you think is most compelling now?
Ready for a little bit of a word vomit? I guess
Let's go.
let's start from the beginning too. Like when I was just mind dumping on the windows of CTC back in the day with a marker. I mean, again, the world I came from was Aaron Rodgers times State Farm,
Yep.
right? That's where I was from prior to CTC. Finding an athlete, paying them buco bucks for Aaron Rodgers to post a Twitter post. One liner was 50K. Just like, what the? So you all the retained clients, the repeat purchasers at that agency were the Procter and Gambles of the world, people that just had a bucket to throw money at. ROI, like direct ROI, wasn't something that they were really looking at. It was top of the funnel awareness, again, filling a bucket. Anybody that was a D2C brand between 5 million and 50 million, they were taking a risk by doing this. And the people at the agency were always saying too, don't sell them on ROI. You're selling them on stardom. Of course, Aaron Rodgers is going to give you a lift in performance, this, that, and otherwise. But I will say, outside of the Procter and Gambles of the world, those D2C brands, 5 million to 50 million, no repeat purchasers, and they were livid at you, and you just felt like scum. So that's what led to I was fascinated why I transitioned to CTC, because everything was ROI driven. Everything had a tangible metric associated with a target KPI, all of the above. They really prided themselves on that. And so at CTC, it was like, I don't think macro is the move, right? You need to do your due diligence. We need to go micro to macro, right? Spread the net wide, get as many micros, figure out who works best before you make this 100K investment in some macro influencer to become the face of your brand. Like, we made an analogy, like going after a macro influencer right away is like walking into a bar drunk and throwing a bullseye at the dartboard. It's like, you should just not do that. There's a time and place for sure. We're not saying never do macros, but work your way up to it. So that's kind of like the first step of like learnings in this influencer space. And I would say micro influencers, I would take 10 micros over one macro any day of the week, just greater reach, greater engagement, greater conversion rate, more niche of an audience to align your brand with on a per follower basis. And then that's just 1/10 of the cost. And then you easily get usage rights to that content to repurpose into paid media, or a macro influencer could very easily charge you $10,000 to use that content. That's no better than a customer piece of content for 30 days. Just kind of ridiculous. Then from there, just realizing the power of creative that can be generated from influencers, right? This is content that's native to the feed. These are professional content creators. These are people that have proven to understand the algorithm on the organic side of things. So let's put that to the test. Let's repurpose this into paid media. And then, to be honest, what was really intriguing to me was CTC offered a studio shoot. And then there's these other studio shoots out there, right? That typically studio shoot, see, at least cost 15K for a decent amount of assets. And what I found was, when seeding influencers, we're able to get 60 to 90 unique assets for the cost of sending out 100 products. That, from a cost effective standpoint, now, are you going to get the really well curated studio shot content? No. But these are professional content creators at the end of the day, and seeding lended itself to a very cost effective route into acquiring creative, as well as getting you some organic distribution. So we didn't go into what seeding is, but that has become the strategy in working with micro influencers to begin with, for sure.
So I think there's something really interesting that, depending on how someone enters into our world, the primary operating driver for how they make decisions is very different. So what I've noticed is, if people enter in through, like, they went to design school, right, as
Yeah.
the entry point into marketing, the primary value for every decision making hierarchy is like an aesthetic question, right? It's a
Yeah.
question of look and feel. And this isn't about right or wrong. It's just the point of the asset, right? Whereas for you, you came from a world where you had a very negative sense of the value created off the money spent, right? You had this negative, you used the word, it made you feel scummy, right?
Yeah.
So
Not only that, though, it was incredibly inauthentic.
yeah,
It's so
right.
inauthentic. These players that had never heard of this brand, that are literally doing an Instagram post at that time, where the copy was literally copied and pasted to them, written by a brand marketing director,
Yes. Yep.
giving it to them. Then there's like grammatical errors on accident or something, or they posted like the thing that was a part of the email that wasn't supposed to be included in the post. It's just like
Right.
so
So you see
fraudulent.
this, like, yeah, so you see this sort of masquerade occurring, and then all of a sudden you see, like, oh wait, there's this other way to sort of obligate yourself to actually create value for your partner, to drive value in excess of the cost you're charging them. And that all of a sudden feels rewarding, right? It's like, oh, this is a positive experience for the brand and me. So now all of a sudden you're anchored into this primary driver of all of your decisions is value. It has to work, right? Above all else, that's the hierarchic principle that drives your decision making. So for you now, it's funny because you've actually found yourself almost into a creative strategist role, which
sure.
is you're sourcing creative and you're deploying it in paid media, but you will fight tooth and nail for the premise that like the only rule is it has to work. There is no actual aesthetic principle. There is no brand obligation. Like those premises are subjective opinions held by individuals. And like the outcome is sort of determined by the market. And so there's like this way in which that is the thing that rules all. And so it gives you, I think, a unique voice in the creative world. Now, I'm sure it's one that you run into some resistance on quite a bit from the aesthetic point of view. So let's talk a little bit about how you think about what you just described. Source 60 to 90 pieces of content. Maybe if some of it isn't on brand, maybe some of
Yeah,
it
yeah.
isn't using the right language. Like, what would you tell a brand, or let's say you're managing your own brand? How do you handle that standard, or is there one at all for you, or is it just let it run and the market decides?
Well, you know
Be
my answer.
honest. Be honest.
Oh man, you know me. This isn't Twitter where I'm just being loving to everybody.
Oh,
Let's just backtrack a little bit just to communicate what seeding is, because I feel like I just
okay.
bypassed that completely. So every month we're typically identifying and reaching out to 500 influencers. All 500 are getting a message along the lines of, "Hey TH, I would never say this to you, but hey TH, we think you create great content. I think you'd love our product. We think we would love to send it to you, no strings attached." And what we mean by that is we have no expectation whatsoever of you to post. Just send me your address. We'll get this right out to you. So we are leading by giving, not asking, very relational, very like counter cultural to the typical transactional model, pay per post model. So we're not saying we want you to post, here's your creative brief, here's your talking points, here's the scenes we want you to capture. We're leaving it to them. And just by the numbers, typically 100 opt in to receive product. Out of every 100 products that you send out, 30 influencers end up posting 60 to 90 assets. That's where those numbers come from. So now there's no creative briefs, right? So what type of content are you getting? Are there going to be those cookie cutter videos that hit all the talking points, capture those scenes, and it's everything that you dreamt about? Some, sure. But a majority of the creative is going to be their genuine, authentic interaction with the product that you're sending them. It's not going to be what you dreamt of every time. Now, I would say, and you called me the creative strategist, we're very much so leaning into these influencers as like the creative marketing agency.
Well,
Every single one.
that is a creative strategy. That is a creative strategy.
For sure. I just don't want to. I want to give the credit where credit is due. That said, you might not love all of their creative strategies at the end of the day. But again, it is their raw, authentic, genuine interaction with the product. And that is something to value here. Something that's BS bleeds right through the screen. People aren't stupid, even though they're mindlessly scrolling. They can see through that stuff. I would say it is only to your detriment if you did not launch everything at the end of the day. By allowing your human decision making into the picture and choosing not to launch a piece of creative, saying, and we run into this all the time. I have these conversations all the time. They'll look at these 60 to 90 unique assets, pick 15 to 20, and say, oh, we know these remaining 50 to 60 assets aren't worth running. We know they're not going to work. This isn't something that is going to capture attention. It's not going to get something to convert. It's like, okay, great. That's your theory. Let's put that theory to the test, though, because we can hedge your bet. And the only way you miss out on opportunity is if you don't launch it in the first place and give it the opportunity to find success. How? Cost caps, of course.
Yep.
You're going to set a target CPA. It's only going to spend money if it beats that target CPA. And if it's not going to, allow Facebook to make the decision instead of you. Facebook's not going to put money behind it if it's not going to work at the end of the day. You're not wasting any money, no harm, no foul. But by not launching it in the first place, that's the only way you miss out on opportunity here. And I can't tell you how many ads, ugly ads, whatever you want to call them, that have scaled ad accounts. Now, I'm super over-indexed on Twitter on showcasing those scenarios.
Sure.
It doesn't happen every time. But I will say, out of the 60 to 90 unique assets that we launch from each month's seeding, I've never personally been right in choosing which one is going to end up being the top performer. You can call me a terrible account strategist, whatever, but
I'll call you honest. I think that's the difference. I think it's good. So I think there's this method that I think fits for a number of brands where you have to decide, I think, what your leverage point is. What do I mean by this? If my leverage point is brand aesthetic, meaning that whether it's me individually as the creative director of the brand or the product designer or the brand owner, I so uniquely understand what appeals to the customer that I'm describing, such that my opinion of the visual aesthetic of this brand, and there are these people that are that talented, they know this thing, is the primary value proposition of the thing, then be precious about it. Okay. But what I think that most brands do is that it's not actually what makes them unique and valuable. And so then they gatekeep access for content through a subjective lens that isn't actually connected to the primary value. And that's when you actually cause yourself problems. And so if that's not your primary value proposition, if you ask yourself right now, am I a brand that the primary value is an aesthetic? Then I think you need to be very liberal about the what you allow through as the voice of who you are from people speaking about the experience of your product in a way that is true to them. And I think that most brands should fall into that category, not the other one, but people treat it the other way.
Yeah. And that's just so counter to what people say they want out of UGC. Raw, genuine, authentic interactions with their
Well,
product. Then
we know that's a lie, right?
no,
Like
without a doubt. That's why I have these
what?
we have these
Yeah.
conversations.
This episode of the E-commerce Playbook podcast is brought to you by Segmetrics. Segmetrics demystifies your e-commerce funnels, helping you make data-driven decisions. While your e-commerce store's built-in analytics are great for measuring sales and cash flow, optimizing your marketing campaigns requires more data. And if your store offers subscription products, understanding your true lifetime ROAS is crucial for allocating your marketing budget across channels. Segmetrics makes it easy to understand your customers, leads, and prospects and how they behave throughout your funnel. With features like lifetime attribution, you'll be able to see where your long-term customers come from, going beyond individual purchases. Moreover, Segmetrics enables you to feed conversion data back to ad platforms, optimizing their ability to send you more high-quality traffic. You can even share subscription purchase data or recurring payments. Your store can leverage Segmetrics' extensive library of over 90 integrations with popular marketing and e-commerce tools, including Shopify, WooCommerce, Meta Ads, Google Ads, TikTok, Klaviyo, and more. Discover how Segmetrics can help your e-commerce business grow at segmetrics.io, or follow the link in the show notes to book a personalized demo with one of Segmetrics' marketing optimization experts today.
So I think that's a good segue too, because so my thing, and you and I, so I put out recently the UGC bullshit meter, and sort of this index of things that I think are sort of literally everything from a total scam and legal liability to what I would call above the line. And you and I traded some notes ahead of this time because it's in some ways a shot at your world in terms of what does it actually mean to be authentic? What does it actually mean to be genuine? You're using these words, but you're also sort of in the business of paying people to say things. Now, you would argue that you don't pay people. Now, I would argue that free things is a payment in whether we sort of quantify it or not. If you paid people in cars, they would literally have to claim that on their tax forms. So it's like at some point, the dollars actually are consequential enough, or there's an implied opportunity for incentive in a way that does possibly create a question of what does it mean to be authentic.
I
But so
think
I'm
we're going
curious,
about
how do you?
well, ask your question. Ask your question. How do you want?
Well, so my question is how do you, as someone who came from this world, right, that you said it's inauthentic and scammy, you built a brand on a principle of we want to build real relationship and authenticity. Like, how do you see the product as it currently sits, and where is your line on where it becomes something other than that? Um, or is it just if it works, it's fair game? It doesn't matter if it's an actor, paid, or anybody. Like, what is your line for what it means to build UGC that's legitimate?
Yeah. Well, in the way that we're doing it, and I'm curious to hear your 2 cents on this too. The way that we're doing it, building out an influencer marketing program at scale, as authentically as we're able to, and as genuine as we're able to, we're doing it. We're doing it. Seeding is exactly that. From a cold outbound standpoint and building out your program with influencers who are not already customers, I would say we can talk about that as well. There's a way definitely to sweep up that low-hanging fruit with customers that are also influencers. That's your most genuine, right? Most authentic base and core group of people that you should be onboarding. But after that, after you sweep up that low-hanging fruit, seeding is without a doubt the most genuine, authentic way to go about building that out at scale. Because again, yes, okay, you kind of called out 2 things here. We're seeding product to influencers, right? No strings attached. So they do receive a form of payment in this sort of product, but it's not product for post. So it's not a transaction in that manner. We're just sending to them, no strings attached, no expectation of them to do whatsoever. That's being communicated. So they don't need to do anything. So it's not product for post. They can do it of their own free will if they genuinely love the product. Now,
Right.
there's also, of course, you called it out, a potential incentive in their mind if they're thinking about this strategically on their side of things. Oh, this brand's interested in potentially working with me. If I throw them a lob and post about them free of cost here, maybe they'll come back and want to work with me in a more legit way that offers payment. I'll call that out and acknowledge it, but I will say, if you follow the influencer sphere at all and just kind of their collective movement as a unit, man, they are so anti giving brands free posts.
They should be,
So,
right? Like,
so I'm just calling
so
it out. Like, I think it's more so to do with they genuinely appreciated how that like relationship was initiated over it being them thinking about the incentive at play to work with the brand long term.
well, but do you think if they knew that you spent $100,000 on that asset and made $300,000, they would feel the same way?
Of course not.
So
But that's without taking into consideration the hundreds, thousands of assets that get launched all the time
right, and do
that
nothing.
don't and that do nothing. So
Right,
they need full context though.
but you're creating this scenario where you are playing the lottery game by which you only reap the reward at in that scenario, right? I think you're right that like again, if we go back to my meter, I put you above the line. Like I think it is much closer to the most authentic thing. But I think something you and I have been talking about, I think this is a good parlay, is this idea of CGC, customer generated content. This idea of what I think UGC was supposed to be from the start. Like when UGC
It's in the word.
right, like this is the thing that we've got to actually sort of hold up a mirror to ourselves as an industry and go like, we took a thing, UGC, which begins with the idea of a user, someone who is using the product, sharing a story about it to their social audience, independent of any relationship with the brand. That's what this began as, right? Now, as marketers, we co opted that and turned it into a thing that we could leverage for our own benefit. We have a way of doing that. We all participate in various forms. But if we go back to why it worked and what is the power of it when it's real, is that people sharing stories. You and I used to use this phrase all the time. The two most powerful influences on purchase decisions are price and a recommendation from somebody you trust, right? And so that recommendation from somebody you trust is what you're attempting to create with UGC, an influencer speaking to their audience about something that they had a genuine experience with. If any part of that equation becomes fake, there is damage and consequence to that somewhere along the spectrum, either to the influence to their audience or from the brand to theirs. Like somewhere along the line, maybe they'll never discover it. Maybe it won't happen the first time, but it will break it somewhere along the line.
For sure. For sure. And so, yeah, customers is something that we're definitely trying to sweep up first and foremost. And again, TH and I have been chatting about this. It just comes down to, does the brand care about organic distribution and influencer marketing program, or is it all about creative to supplement paid media, or is it a mixture of both? And that will determine what you do from there. But TH sourcing customer generated content, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
these subscription type brands, it's easy just to offer a free month subscription in exchange for a 15 to 30-second review. And you can stack a ton of just genuine, authentic testimonials and different types of creative, put together 1 to 2 top performing ads as inspo for them to work off of. Because at the end of the day, the counter to this is like, is it going to be really that good of creative at the end of the day? And
Maybe not.
but it's going to be super authentic, super
Right.
genuine. These are people that are actually genuine adopters of your product, so much so that they buy it on a monthly basis. So going after your highest LTV customers, sourcing creative for them, and offering that free month subscription or something along those lines is very
And so,
powerful.
and so you and I have talked about building this product, and I think you guys are doing this work, and we're hoping to really have something in the market that's really effective about this because I think that gets back to what UGC was supposed to be and powerful. And the reality is that for a lot of brands, there are so many people that are creators now that the overlap of their 500,000 person customer file and people who are already creators, they exist. There are people inside of your database right now who are both customers and creators. And the overlap of those things is where I think going after it and finding it and then compensating them for it. This is another thing
Right.
that I would say is that I would actually pay your customers to become creators on your behalf, to build that army of people who feel connected, appreciated, and valued, commiserate with the value they're offering you. And if you do that, and I think the brands that sort of engage in that are the ones that are going to build a community of continued deep support. Because what I always say is, like, you don't want this to be the only time they talk about you, right?
Right.
That's really the key to this, is that we want to make it so that the thing they say on video, they say 100 times a week. And if they say that thing 100 times a week, the power is actually real and is going to amplify over time, versus if that's the only time they say it.
For sure. Yeah, and there's a way to get them to do this organically as well, right? It's just whatever you want to do. I would just go to your email, right? Highest LTV customers or all customers. I'm a big
That's
fan
right.
of just doing it with all customers. And it's so simple to give them the one or two things. Here's a Dropbox request form. Submit your piece of content in exchange for, again, that 1 month free subscription. Or, hey, here's your code to post on social media. And then you can use a social listening tool like Mighty Scout or Archive, and it can collect all that content in real time. And then all of it can be repurposed into paid media. So again, it just depends what you want, the organic and the paid, or just content for the paid. But very powerful, low-hanging fruit there to sweep up.
Let's do something. So are you game to try something out with me, or the general public here, sir?
Come on.
Okay. If you're a brand and you have more than 10,000 customers in your file, okay, I think that's a pretty low hanging fruit. If you send a group DM, TL and I both have DMs open, and you're game to let us do two things. Here's the rule. Okay. One, we get to source content from your creators or from your customers. Okay. Two, we get to run it in the ad account exactly how we desire, set it up with cost caps. Okay. Three, we get to publicly document every step of the process. Okay. We will do it for you. We will run the campaign for you if you let us do all three of those things in entirety, and see if it works, and see if we can validate the premise and outperform your existing prospecting in some way. Because I think that this is, to me, I think the most interesting sort of ongoing source of creative that doesn't sort of currently get talked about enough, because there's so much nonsense happening on the UGC side. And I think that we want to sort of inject back into the world a little bit of honesty and truth, if we can, to make something cool. So if you're down, DM us and we'll evaluate the brands, and then we'll pick one. And TL, let's do a public, little public.
I love it. Yeah,
build.
yeah.
What do you think?
So 10,000 customers, just to regurgitate, 10,000 customers. We're
Yep.
going to send out an email to all 10,000 customers. We're going to say,
Yep.
hey, thanks for being such a loyal customer. Here's a way that you can support us in exchange for a 1 month free subscription or whatever it is. Please send us a 15 to 30-second video. Here's two of our recent top performing ads, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Out of the 10,000 customers, let's say 1% comes back, 100 testimonials right there. Boom. We edit it, we reformat it, we caption it. We're going to look at it. We're going to make sure these testimonials aren't
barely. This is for free. We're not going to put in a ton of work.
We're not going to make sure they're like cussing about you, butchering you. Oh,
Yeah,
these guys paid me to do this for a free month. Haha. We're going to make sure that none of that nonsense. But
Yep.
We are launching all of it against the cost cap and get as much delivery as we possibly can, get as much volume as we can at efficiency.
Every step of the way from the campaign. Well, we might just
for free
Twitch stream it live
for free.
Yeah, 1 month. One campaign. We'll launch one campaign to prove the premise.
We're gonna have a lot of entries.
I want to see it. We'll pick the best brand and we'll pick somebody, because I think that, like, every step of this documented in a public facing way that people understand would be really useful. So I'm game. I want to assign our name to CGC. CTC loves CGC, right? And let's go let's make it happen. I want to get some honesty back into this premise, and I'd love to do it alongside you guys. So let's, even though we're not equity partners anymore, let's run it back. Let's do something.
These guys are working with us more now that we're actually separate from their business. It's unbelievable.
They're making you earn it. It's less entitlement now, so it's good.
That's right.
Where can people follow you, man? Where are they going to get a hold of you?
Taylor Lagace, your favorite Taylor on Twitter, and then Kynship.co. And then my partner is Cody Woodick on Twitter as well, constantly putting out content to try to provide you as much value as possible.
You guys are doing a great job, man. You guys are doing a good thing out in the world. And I love seeing the stuff from the create guys, from the Purdy and Fig. Like, you've got some really cool things going on. So check out TL and Cody over at Kynship, and getting those DMs to see which brand we're going to run this CGC funnel for.
I'm excited, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all. Take care.
Thanks again for joining us on the E-commerce Playbook podcast. Please remember to rate and review. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Always really helpful to us. Until then, happy scaling.